I sat in the front pew of the church, my hands folded neatly in my lap, staring at the polished mahogany coffin at the altar. My mother was inside, a woman I'd spent my entire life trying to impress, a woman who, in the end, made it painfully clear I was never enough. Tears pricked at the edges of my vision, but they weren't for grief. They were for closure, the kind I knew I'd never truly get. Beside me, my sister Olivia sniffled dramatically, dabbing at her eyes with a lace-trimmed handkerchief. She always had a way of making everything about her, even now. When the priest finished his final blessing, Olivia let out Even at a funeral, she managed to be the center of attention. I swallowed the lump in my throat and glanced toward the second row, where my aunt and uncle sat stiffly, avoiding my gaze. The same went for the rest of the family. They knew. They all knew. I had prepared myself for what was coming. I had told myself I wouldn't care, but nothing could have prepared me for the lawyer's words after the service. "I'm sorry, Mandy," Mr. Holloway said, adjusting his glasses as he flipped through the pages of my mother's will. "Your parents left everything to Olivia." A cold numbness spread through me. My nails dug into the fabric of my dress. Olivia had 3 properties, a husband who made 6 figures, and luxury cars parked in her driveway. Yet I, who worked my way through college, juggled 2 jobs, and never once asked my parents for help, had been deemed unworthy. "That's ridiculous," Aunt Marlene muttered under her breath, breaking the tense silence. Olivia didn't look surprised. She simply let out a delicate sigh, as if this were just another unfortunate burden she had to bear. "I mean," she murmured, placing a hand over mine as if offering comfort, "you've always been so independent, Mandy. Mom and Dad just wanted to help me, that's all." I pulled my hand away. "You knew, didn't you?" I whispered. She bit her lip. They may have mentioned something before." And there it was, the truth. I wanted to scream, to rage, to demand how, even after death, my parents still found a way to remind me that I wasn't good enough. But years of being the overlooked daughter had taught me one thing: anger wouldn't change anything. So, instead, I smiled, because if they thought I was independent before, they had no idea what I was capable of now. I turned to the lawyer. "Thank you for your time," I said smoothly, standing up and gathering my purse. "But I won't be contesting the will." Olivia's brow furrowed. "Wait, you're not mad?" I gave her a long, measured look before tilting my head. "Oh, Liv," I murmured, stepping closer so only she could hear. "I don't need their money." Her shoulders sagged in relief, mistakenly thinking I was surrendering. I turned on my heel and walked out of the office with my head held. What Olivia didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I had already prepared my own final gift for our dear parents, and it would be unforgettable. I wasn't always invisible to my parents. At least I don't think I was. There must have been a time, maybe when I was a toddler, clutching at my mother's skirt or babbling nonsense to my father, when they saw me, when they really saw me. But as I grew older, the difference between me and Olivia became impossible to ignore. She was the golden child, the cherished daughter who could do no wrong, and me, I was the afterthought. It started small. When Olivia won her first dance recital at age 6, my parents threw a party complete with a cake shaped like ballet slippers. When I placed first in a spelling bee that same year, my mother patted my head and told me to keep up the good work. When Olivia turned 16, she got a brand new car wrapped in a big red bow. When I turned 16, I got a used bike because you don't really go out much anyway, Mandy. I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need the approval, the admiration, the love, but deep down, it stung. Still, I worked hard while Olivia breezed through life on charm and parental favoritism. I built something for I sat in my tiny apartment that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying the words over and over in my head. Your parents left everything to Olivia. Of course they did. Why would I expect anything different? My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. A message from Aunt Marlene. Mandy, I just want you to know I think what your parents did was disgusting. You deserve better. A second later, another message appeared. You should fight this. Contest the will. The word fair made me laugh. Nothing about my relationship with my parents had ever been fair, and I had accepted that long ago. But what I couldn't accept was Olivia sitting there, pretending this was just another unfortunate inconvenience for her, pretending she hadn't. I opened my laptop and logged into my email. There was someone I needed to reach out to, a a certain lawyer. A week later, I stood in front of my parents' house. No, Olivia's house now. It still smelled the same, freshly cut grass, the lingering scent of my mother's lavender perfume embedded in the walls. But it wasn't home anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. Olivia answered the door, her face lighting up with fake surprise. "Mandy, I wasn't expecting you." Of course she wasn't. "I need to pick up some things," I said simply. "Mom had some personal letters and keepsakes I'd like to have." Olivia hesitated but then stepped aside, waving me in. "Of course, take whatever you need." I walked through the house slowly, memories pressing against me with every step. The living room where I had watched my parents shower Olivia with praise. The dining table where I had once sat in silence while they gushed over her latest accomplishments. I headed toward my father's old study. This was what I had come for. I pulled open the desk drawer, my fingers grazing over old documents, notebooks, and letters until I found it, the original copy of my parents' will. I had already seen the one the lawyer had read aloud, but this was different. I turned, my heart pounding. Olivia stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You weren't supposed to see that," she said, her voice calm, almost bored. I stared at her, waiting for an explanation, a confession, anything. Instead, she just shrugged. "Mom and Dad always intended for me to have everything, Mandy. I just made sure their wishes were properly carried out." I had never hated her more. I could have screamed, could have fought, could have marched straight to a lawyer and exposed her for what she'd done. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. "Thank you for your honesty," I said, my voice steady. That's all I needed to know. And with that, I walked out of the house, already planning my next move. Because Olivia had just made one very big mistake. She thought I would let this go. She thought I was the same girl who had always been overlooked. But she was about to find out just how wrong she was. The truth had been sitting right there, buried in my father's desk, waiting for me to find it. My parents had intended to split their estate between Olivia and me, but Olivia had made sure that never happened. She hadn't just accepted her role as the golden child, she had taken everything, ensuring I walked away with nothing. She thought I would do what I'd always done, accept it, swallow it, move on. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I spent the next week planning. I could have gone straight to a lawyer, could have fought the will in court, but legal battles were messy and slow, and Olivia, she was careful. By now, I had no doubt she'd covered her tracks. No, this required something different. Something that would hit her where it really hurt. I just needed the right person to help me. I found him in an old bar downtown, the kind with dim lighting and the faint scent of whiskey soaked into the wooden walls. "Hello, Connor," I said, sliding into the booth across from Olivia's husband. Connor looked up, startled. He wasn't expecting me. "Mandy?" He frowned, setting down his drink. "What are you doing here?" I folded my hands on the table. "I know about the will." His entire body went still. "I know Olivia changed it. I found the version in Dad's study. My parents wanted me to have half of everything, but Olivia made sure that didn't happen." Connor let out a slow breath, rubbing a hand over his face. He didn't look surprised. "You knew," I said. "It wasn't a question." He sighed. "I had my suspicions." He paused, staring at his glass. "But Olivia? She controls everything. The finances, the house, the accounts. I don't ask questions anymore." Of course he didn't. Olivia had always been the dominant one in their marriage. He was just along for the ride. But I wasn't here to judge Connor. I was here to use him. "Listen," I said, my voice softening. "I don't care about the money. I never have." Connor snorted. "Olivia thinks you do." "Olivia thinks a lot of things." Connor studied me for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, he laughed. "God, I'd love to see that." he muttered, shaking his head. But Olivia, she always wins, Mandy. She's untouchable. Not this time, I said, because I knew something Olivia didn't, and I was about to use it. Over the next week, I dug deep into Olivia's seemingly perfect life. I wasn't interested in her bank statements or property deeds. I wanted something more personal. It didn't take long to find it. Late one night, while scrolling through old social media posts, I stumbled upon a picture from 3 years ago, a vacation Olivia had taken to Italy with a group of friends. The problem? Connor had never been on that trip. I clicked on the tag names. One stood out, a man named David Carlisle. He wasn't just a friend, he was something much more. I scrolled through his account, clicking on old comments and interactions, and there it was, a thread of flirtatious remarks, inside jokes, late-night messages spanning years. Olivia had been cheating on Connor, and she was sloppy about it. I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. This was it, my first move. The beauty of revenge wasn't always in the grand act. Sometimes it was in the subtle unraveling. I drafted a message and sent it to Connor. No words, no explanation, just screenshots. The reply came almost instantly. "Where did you get these? Does it matter?" I typed back. "You deserve to know the truth." A long pause. Then, "Meet me tomorrow, we need to talk." I smiled. Checkmate. The next evening, I met Connor at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. He was already there when I arrived, hunched over a cup of coffee, staring blankly at the table. The moment he looked up and saw me, I knew he had seen everything. I slid into the chair across from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with something fragile, anger, disbelief, maybe even relief. "How long?" he finally asked, his voice hoarse. I exhaled. "From what I found, at least 4 years." Connor let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. Of course, he picked up his coffee, but his hands were shaking too much to take a sip. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," I said. And for once, I actually meant it. "No, you're not," he said, his eyes locking onto mine. "You wanted me to know. You wanted this to happen." I didn't deny it. "Yes, but only because Olivia deserved to be exposed. She's been playing everyone. Connor, you, even my parents, right up until they died." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "And now what? What do you want from me, Mandy?" I leaned forward. "I don't want your money. I don't want your sympathy. I just want to watch her world fall apart." Connor studied me for a long moment, then slowly, a small dark smile curved his lips. "You're not the only one." We sat there for nearly an hour, going over every detail. Olivia's manipulations, her lies, the fake will. Connor was angry, but not in a volatile way. His anger was colder, controlled, the kind of anger that led to devastation. "I want a divorce," he said. It was a bold move, a calculated strike. Olivia had spent years curating the perfect image, a loving wife, a devoted mother. She needed that image, and Connor was about to rip it away from her. The next morning, I watched from a safe distance as Connor's lawyer delivered the divorce papers to Olivia's doorstep. She answered in a silk robe, her hair perfectly styled, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. But the moment she saw the envelope, her face twisted into something ugly. I wished I could hear her reaction, the shock, the panic. Instead, I just watched as her fingers tightened around the papers, knuckles white. And then, just for a moment, she glanced around, not at Connor, not at her kids, but at the neighbors. She cared more about what they thought than the fact that her marriage was crumbling right in front of her. Classic Olivia. I should have walked away after that, let Connor handle the rest, but I wasn't finished. Olivia still thought she could control the narrative, that she could manipulate her way out of this the way she always had. She was wrong. That evening, I made sure of it. With a few clicks, I uploaded the proof of her affair, screenshots, messages, pictures, but I didn't send them to Connor. I sent them to her entire social circle, her mommy group chats, the charity board members, even the homeowners association. Everyone who mattered to her. The fallout was immediate. Olivia's phone blew up with calls and messages. She tried to deny it at first, tried to spin some kind of misunderstanding, but there was too much evidence. By the next morning, she was a pariah. The friends she had spent years cultivating now wanted nothing to do with her. And for the first time in her life, Olivia was alone. The thing about people like Olivia is that they never believe consequences apply to them. They lie, manipulate, and twist the truth to fit their version of reality. They believe they're untouchable, that no matter what they do, things will always work out in their favor. But not this time. I made sure of that. A week after I sent out the evidence of her affair, Olivia was spiraling. Her once loyal friends had cut her off. The school moms whispered behind her back at drop-offs, the charity board where she once reigned. Olivia had lost everything, her reputation, her marriage, and her perfect image. But she wasn't the type to go down quietly. No, she still had one last move to play. I was at work when she called. I debated ignoring it, letting her stew in the mess she'd created, but something inside— "You ruined my life." Her voice was raw, almost unrecognizable. "No, Olivia," I said calmly. "You did that all on your own." She let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "You think you're so clever, don't you? You think you've won." "I don't need to win," I replied. "I just needed the truth to come out." She was silent for a long moment. Then her voice dropped to something colder. "You don't understand, Mandy. You think you've taken everything from me? Fine. But you better watch your back because I have nothing left to lose." And with that, she hung up. A normal person might have been scared, but I knew Olivia. She was all talk. Still, I wasn't about to let my guard down, not yet. Olivia might have lost her reputation, her marriage, and her perfect image, but there was still one thing left: the house. I didn't need the money, but I needed to finish what I started. So I called. "Do you still have the original will?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, confusion in his voice. "Why?" I smiled. "Because it's time to fix what Olivia broke." It took a few more weeks, but eventually my lawyer filed the case. Olivia had fraudulently altered legal documents, a serious crime. There was more than enough proof, and with Connor's statement, she didn't stand a chance. The court ruled in my favor. My parents' original wishes were reinstated, which meant half of everything, including the house, now belonged to me. I'll never forget the look on Olivia's face when the sheriff showed up with the eviction notice. "You can't do this!" she screamed, her voice shrill with rage. "This is my house!" "Not anymore," I said, standing in the doorway. "You took everything from me, Olivia, and now I'm just taking back what was mine." She was shaking, her hands clenched into fists. "Where am I supposed to go?" she whispered, her eyes desperate. I tilted my head. "I guess you'll have to be independent now." And then, with the sweetest smile I could muster, I handed her one last gift, an old, used bicycle, the same kind my parents had given me for my 16th birthday. I walked back inside and shut the door, leaving her standing there, alone for the first time in her life. Olivia had no one to fall back on. And for the first time in my life, I was finally free. The house was quiet for the first time in years. I walked through its halls without feeling like an outsider. No more judgmental stares, no more whispered conversations about how different. Yet as I stood in the grand living room, surrounded by expensive furniture and perfectly curated decor, I felt nothing. This place had never been a home to me. It had been a battleground, a symbol of everything I had been denied. I knew what I had to do next. I put the house on the market the very next day, not for profit, not for revenge, but because I wanted a clean slate. This house had been Olivia's kingdom, my parents' shrine to their perfect daughter, and I wanted no part of it. I watched from a distance as the for sale sign was hammered into the lawn. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was losing something. I felt like I was winning. Olivia, on the other hand, wasn't faring so well. I heard from mutual acquaintances that she was struggling. Connor had won full custody, and without him to bankroll her lifestyle, things unraveled fast. The last time I saw her, she was renting a cramped apartment on the outskirts of town, working a low-level job she despised. For once, there was no safety net, no parents to bail her out, no adoring social circle to prop her up. She was finally living the kind of life she had always looked down on, but the funny thing, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel guilty either. I just felt done. The money I received from my parents' estate, I donated most of it, not out of spite, but because I had built my life without their help, and I didn't need their wealth to define me. I kept enough to start over somewhere new, a different city, a different life, one where I wasn't Mandy, the forgotten daughter, just Mandy. A week before I left town, Aunt Marlene invited me over for dinner. She had been the only relative who truly stood by me throughout everything. As we sat at the table, she reached for my hand. "You know," she said, smiling softly, "your parents were wrong about you." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "They always thought you were the one who didn't need them, that you were too strong, too independent. But the truth is, they needed you." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She sighed. "They built their entire world around Olivia because she needed to be propped up. She needed their validation, their money, their constant approval. But you thrived despite them, and that scared them." The words settled deep inside me. Maybe she was right. Maybe my parents had never ignored me because I wasn't good enough. Maybe they ignored me because they knew I didn't need them the way Olivia did. And for the first time, that thought didn't hurt. That night, as I packed the last of my things, I took one last look